He is standing by. The Premier of Saskatchewan, Brad Wall, joins us now via Skype from Swift Current. Nice to see you, Mr. Premier.
Thanks for having me back.
Well, look, I know you're just a messenger of the Prime Minister, but even so, what are your expectations for tomorrow's Western Premiers Conference?
Well, I am going to be a messenger for the people of the province and the economic interests of Saskatchewan. And, the economic interests of Saskatchewan have a lot in common with the interests of the rest of Western Canada. So lots of the agenda is dominated by economic issues, infrastructure, the labor shortage. And I know we'll be talking a lot about energy and its confluence with the environment and fact versus MULCAIR fiction, Mr. MULCAIR'S fiction. But I think it's an opportunity for the western part of the country to resolve, frankly, and then to act on that resolve, to be more proactive in communicating the benefits of not just energy development in the country, but of resource development. Because when someone takes a run, someone who wants to be the Prime Minister takes a run at natural resources and tries to get into the whole petrodollar thing, it isn't just about the oil sands. It's about conventional oil production. We're the second leading producer of oil in the country. It's about potash production, resource development. And so we've got a lot of skin in that game, as you can imagine. And I think we can frankly resolve to do a better job of proactively communicating the benefits of that kind of resource development to the country, yes, to the manufacturing sector. We can also talk about the environmental measures we have in place in our province and across the West to mitigate against the environmental concerns around resource development. In fact, to ensure sustainability. So, by the way, that's a track record that would be the envy of most countries that are in the resource development business. And I think we can do a better job of getting that information out there. And maybe then Mr. MULCAIR would understand that, look, this is, on the whole, a very positive thing for the country, and the West is working hard to make sure that we're environmentally responsible, even as we create jobs and economic momentum, not just for our region, but for all of Canada.
Premier Wall, you use the term proactive. I mean, it's fascinating, particularly given last hour we had Ray Hurd on the program, who was once an advisor to the Liberal Party, and John Turner, and he said, look, if I was giving the Premier's advice, and by the way, let them know it's free, but if I was giving the Premier's advice, I would say you've got to hammer him harder. Now, you have been rather forceful, in fairness to you, in terms of your criticism of MULCAIR'S junk economics and his Dutch disease theory and so on. But when you say more proactive, are you saying that your counterparts, the other Western premiers, have not been aggressive enough in dealing with him?
No, I'm not. But I do think that there's more strength in a number of voices rather than one, even in the wake of Mr. MULCAIR'S Dutch disease remarks, which did betray a lack of knowledge about the economy of the country and a real oversimplification of the resource sector. But even in the wake of those comments, individually, provinces were kind of coming off the bench. And I think we're stronger when we work together. And so there are a couple of opportunities for that, Krista. There's the Western Premiers, that forum with the territories in Manitoba. There's also the New West Partnership, which is a free trade arrangement between the three half provinces in Western Canada, the three most western provinces, and also an agreement, by the way, to share in procurement, to promote our region economically together where possible. And here's an opportunity as well for those three provinces, for the three New West Partnership provinces, and all of the territories and all of the provinces of Western Canada in the forum that we'll talk about tomorrow in Edmonton, for us to come together with a stronger voice. And I think that's one of the advantages of a regional voice versus one-offing it from the provinces.
Might part of being proactive also include an invitation to Mr. MULCAIR to come view your natural resources, as he is poised to do later in the week in Alberta in his tour of the oil sands?
Well, we've done that in the past. We do that again right now on Sun TV News. We want to invite him to consider, come and have a look at a potash mine. We have 53% of the world's potash in our province. We're very fortunate to have that amount of this very strategic resource, and private companies developing at $12 billion worth of expansion. When Mr. MULCAIR talks about, quote-unquote, internalizing the environmental costs of the oil sands, he's talking about doing it in the resource sector, and that could significantly damage the job-creating potential of that particular industry. So we've also got the back and play in southeast Saskatchewan. The U.S. Geological Survey says it's the largest conventional play in North America, including Prudhoe Bay. It goes a little bit into the States and some into Manitoba, though we're trying to take care of that through horizontal drilling. But it's a very important find, and he should have a look at that as well, because conventional oil would be hurt by the policies that he's hinting at. One final point on that piece. He's talking about internalizing the environmental costs of this industry. What does that mean exactly? We need to know exactly the kind of carbon tax or regime he's thinking about to be able to have the discussion we want to have and to go directly to Canadians and say, here's the impact to our economy at a time when the world is pretty unstable from an economic vantage point where we have a comparative advantage. Here's what these policies would mean on the street in terms of jobs, in terms of energy rates potentially across the country.
Commentator Rex Murphy noted that there is a certain irony in Mr. MULCAIR'S criticism of Western economies. He's not saying very much about what's going on in Quebec as chaos continues to reign, although things were a little more tame there over the weekend. But then he's firing bullets at Western provinces that are sort of peacefully going about their business and creating prosperity. Do you share the same observation in noting that irony?
I read that piece yesterday in the National Post by Rex Murphy, and it was like most Rex Murphy efforts, most of his missives. It's just very well written and cogently argued. He makes a great point. Mr. MULCAIR, I think in his response to why he's been so mute on the Quebec situation, has said, well, education is the responsibility of the provinces. Well, resources are the responsibility of the provinces. So at the very least, before you broadside that sector on a national talk show at the House, I think it was, and it's where it all started, maybe you ought to pick up the phone and consult with that part of the country where the resource development is happening, because resources are also provincial jurisdiction.
Another article that was published over the weekend that you probably viewed concerns the personal finances, I suppose you would say, of Thomas MULCAIR. And this hour, Nathan Cullen, a prominent member of the NDP, is defending Mr. MULCAIR because he won't comment and explain why he remortgaged his house 11 times. Now, I appreciate that some people take the view that this story is out of bounds. Others do not, including Ray Hurd, who's the former head of Global News and has all kinds of expertise in the field of journalism. He says it's a perfectly legitimate story to do because right now Thomas MULCAIR is more dangerous than ever because he really is gaining in the polls. Do you share that concern? Do you have any concerns about what he was doing, remortgaging his house 11 times?
I don't know the details of the story. There could be any number of reasons. People in our province, because of the growing economy, have seen the values of their property increase significantly. So in a responsible way, some are doing that remortgaging to fix up their place. Some are buying maybe a cottage or properties elsewhere. A friend of mine bought his dream fishing boat. So there are any number of reasons for that sort of thing. I'm not sure about the frequency, but I think I'll leave that for Mr. MULCAIR to decide whether he's going to comment. I just continue to focus on what their resource development policy might be and how it might, frankly, be harmful not just to the West, but to Canada, where jobs are being created from coast to coast to coast because of our natural resources.
Fair enough. Premier, one last question for you. It was a major reorganization last week of your government, a cabinet shuffle that resulted, I think, in almost everyone but 2 ministers being shuffled. Now, usually when cabinet shuffles take place, it's because there's a problem with how people are performing in cabinet. Your government is experiencing a lot of success right now. So what was with that shakeup?
Well, we think it's part of renewal. We have 49 members now of the 58 in the legislature. So we need to build capacity. We need to give others a chance to serve. We also restructured government significantly. I don't think we want to shuffle for the sake of shuffling. It's not much fun, frankly, when you go through that kind of change. But it's important to do, especially if we want form to follow function. We have a growth plan for the province. We're going to be highlighting sort of phase 2 of that plan later this year. We want government to reflect our plan for growth. So we've removed a lot of the silos between the various economic ministries, created one ministry that now is energy and resources, employment and immigration, the old enterprise ministry, tourism, all under one shop with a couple of ministers working that particular file, ostensibly to make sure our government doesn't get in the way of growth, but also identifies opportunities for us to deal with the challenges of growth from an infrastructure standpoint. And finally, to make sure we're telling our story. We've sort of been the tree that fell in the forest for many, many years. We've had this amazing story to tell. We want to do a better job of that. So now we have a coordinated, focused ministry to do it. We've also removed some other ministries completely and put them in with others to have fewer ministries and hopefully make government more focused on the plan, on the growth plan we have for the province moving forward.
Thank you, Premier.
Thanks very much.
Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall joining us live via Skype from Swift Current.